Welcome back to my channel. Did you know that in Montana, some of the world's first nuclear weapons were activated, turning parts of the state into key zones of the United States atomic arsenal? Or that beneath its soil lies one of the largest coal reserves on the planet, and that some of the largest dinosaurs ever discovered have been found there, including species that exist nowhere else in the world? Montana is not just the big sky state, it is history, it is buried wealth, and it is raw natural force. Get ready, because today you'll discover 35 incredible facts about Montana that will completely change the way you see the American West. 35. The hydrological apex of North America. There is a specific spot in Glacier National Park known as Triple Divide Peak that serves as a three-way split for the continent's water. If a raindrop hits the very top of this mountain, its fate depends entirely on which side of the peak it slides down. One side sends water into the Columbia River system, which eventually empties into the Pacific Ocean. Another side directs the flow toward the Missouri and Mississippi rivers, destined for the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean. The third side leads to the Saskatchewan River drainage, which carries the water all the way north to Hudson Bay and the Arctic Ocean. It is truly the hydrological center of the continent, a place where the geography dictates the destiny of every drop of moisture. I once stood nearby and tried to imagine the journey of those tiny streams as they separated for thousands of miles. 34. The sky once dropped a giant plate. In the winter of 1887, the small community of Fort Keogh witnessed a weather event that defies standard logic. While most of us think of snowflakes as delicate, tiny crystals that vanish on our tongues, the geography of Montana's atmosphere produced a monster. According to historical records, a snowflake fell that was measured at 15 in wide and 8 in thick. To put that in perspective, that is roughly the size of a large pizza or a dinner plate falling from the sky. Imagine walking through a blizzard and being slapped in the face by a single massive piece of ice that could cover your entire head. This occurred because the unique mountain-to-prairie transition in Montana can create perfect moisture and temperature conditions for crystals to clump together into giant aggregates. This record remains the largest snowflake ever documented in world history. 33. A freshwater giant in the West. When people think of massive lakes in the United States, they usually point toward the Great Lakes on the border with Canada. However, if you look west of the Mississippi River, the largest natural freshwater lake is tucked away in northwest Montana. Flathead Lake is an absolute behemoth, stretching nearly 28 mi long and 15 mi wide. It covers about 200 square miles of surface area, which is significantly larger than Lake Tahoe. Because the geography of the surrounding mountains provides such a clean, filtered runoff, the water is famous for being incredibly clear. On a calm day, you can look down and see rocks on the bottom that are 20 or 30 feet below you, making it feel like your boat is floating on air. It is a glacial remnant that reminds us how powerful the ice was thousands of years ago. 32. The Great Wall that nature built. Deep within the Bob Marshall Wilderness lies a geological formation so striking that it is named after a world-famous landmark. The Chinese Wall is a massive limestone escarpment that stretches for about 15 meters and rises up to 1,000 ft high. It is not a man-made structure, but a natural cliff formed by a massive thrust fault where older rock was pushed up over younger rock. For hikers like me, who have teaked along the Continental Divide Trail, seeing this sheer vertical wall of stone emerge from the forest is a humbling experience. It looks like a fortress built for giants, cutting a straight line across the landscape and serving as a dramatic physical barrier between the eastern and western slopes of the mountains. 31. Mountains that are basically islands. Montana is home to a geographical phenomenon known as island mountain ranges. While the main Rocky Mountains form a continuous chain, central Montana is dotted with several smaller ranges that are completely isolated from one another by vast seas of flat prairie. Because these ranges are geographically isolated, they often develop their own unique microclimates and can even have plant and animal subspecies that are slightly different from their cousins in the main Rockies. Before continuing, be sure to subscribe my channel and leave a like to keep discovering the strange and incredible geography of our entire country. 30. The disappearing ice giants. Glacier National Park is famous for its namesake features, but the geography of the park is changing rapidly. When the park was established in 1910, it was estimated that there were about 150 active glaciers. However, due to shifting climate patterns, that number has plummeted significantly. Today, only about 25 glaciers remain that meet the size requirement to be officially considered active glaciers. A glacier has to be at least 25 acres in size to be more than just a permanent snowfield. If you visit today, you are seeing a landscape in transition where the massive ice sheets that once carved the deep valleys are retreating into the highest shadows of the peaks. It is a stark geographical reminder of how dynamic our planet's surface truly is, and why the park's topography looks so jagged and raw. 29. The Badlands of the North. Most people associate Badlands with South Dakota, but Montana holds its own with Makoshika State Park. Located near Glendive, this is the largest state park in Montana and features a rugged alien-looking landscape of hoodoo, caprocs, and deep coulees. The geography here is part of the Hell Creek Formation, which is world-renowned for its dinosaur fossils. In fact, the name Makoshika comes from a Lakota phrase meaning bad land or bad earth. Walking through these formations feels like stepping back 65 million years. The erosion has stripped away the soil to reveal layers of prehistoric history, where 10 different species of dinosaurs have been discovered. It is a stark, beautiful contrast to the lush green forests of western Montana and shows the incredible diversity of the state's terrain. 28. A spring that moves a river. In the city of Great Falls, you will find Giant Springs State Park, which is home to one of the largest freshwater springs in the world. The geography of this site is fascinating because the water you see bubbling up today actually fell as snow or rain in the Little Belt Mountains nearly 3,000 years ago. It takes that long for the water to filter through the underground limestone aquifers before it finally emerges at a constant temperature of 54 degrees F. The flow rate is staggering, discharging about 156 million gallons of water every single day. This massive surge of water creates the Roe River, which was once listed as the shortest river in the world, running only about 200 feet before it empties into the Missouri River. It is a giant plumbing system hidden beneath the earth. 27. The highway above the clouds. If you want to experience the highest geography in Montana by car, you have to drive the Beartooth Highway. This stretch of United States Route 212 is an all-American road that reaches an elevation of nearly 11,000 ft at Beartooth Pass. The road is so high that it crosses through several different life zones, eventually reaching an alpine tundra environment where the ground is frozen most of the year and no trees can grow. The geography here is dominated by glacial cirques and high-altitude plateaus that look more like the surface of the moon than the United States. It is often called the most beautiful drive in America because you are literally looking down on the tops of other mountain ranges. Because of the extreme elevation and geography, the road is usually closed for most of the year due to massive snowdrifts. 26. A border without a fence. Montana shares a massive border with Canada, stretching 545 miles across the northern edge of the state. This is part of the longest undefended border in the world. What is geographically interesting is that most of this line follows the 49th parallel, a straight line of latitude that ignores the mountains, rivers, and valleys it crosses. To mark this boundary, there is a literal slash through the forest known as the border vista. It is a cleared strip of land about 20 ft wide that runs continuously over peaks and through valleys, so that the line between the United States and Canada is visible from the air. In some remote parts of Montana, you can hike right up to this line and stand with 1 foot in each country, surrounded by nothing but wilderness and the simple stone monuments that mark the edge of a nation. 25. The richest hill on Earth. But Montana sits atop one of the most geographically significant mineral deposits ever found. Known as the richest hill on Earth, this area was once the primary source of copper for the entire United States during the Industrial Revolution. The geography of the city is defined by its mining history, with over 500 kilometers of underground tunnels crisscrossing beneath the streets. Because of the massive amount of metal removed from the earth, the ground in some areas has literally shifted. The most famous geographical scar is the Berkeley Pit, a former open-pit mine that is now filled with highly acidic, metal-heavy water. It is over a mile long and nearly 2,000 ft deep, creating a massive artificial lake in the middle of a mountain valley. It is a powerful example of how human geography and geology can clash in a permanent, visible way. 24. The gates that captivated explorers. When Meriwether Lewis and William Clark were navigating the Missouri River in 1805, they encountered a geographical feature that Meriwether Lewis described as the most remarkable cliffs he had ever seen. He named them the Gates of the Mountains. Here, the Missouri River has carved a deep, narrow canyon through limestone. Walls that rise up to 200 feet. The geography is so tight and the walls so vertical that it appears as if the river is completely blocked by mountains until you get right up to the bend, at which point the cliffs seem to swing open like giant gates. It is a stunning corridor of stone that showcases the power of Montana's river systems. 23. The roof of Montana is not for the faint of heart. When people think of the highest mountains in the lower 48 states, they usually think of Colorado or California. However, Montana's highest point, Granite Peak, is considered by many experienced mountaineers to be one of the most difficult state high points to reach. Standing at 12,799 ft, it is the crown of the Beartooth Range. Unlike some high peaks where you can simply hike to the top, Granite Peak often requires technical rock climbing and careful navigation through jagged granite fields. I have known many climbers who had to turn back just a few hundred feet from the top because the mountain simply refused to let them pass. 22. Rare blue gems hidden in the Little Belts. Montana is the only place in the world where you can find a specific and highly coveted gemstone known as the Yogo sapphire. These stones are found in a very narrow geographical area called Yogo Gulch, located within the Little Belt Mountains of central Montana. Yogo sapphires are found in their original igneous rock. The specific vein of rock where they are found is so unique that it remains the only known igneous rock from which sapphires are mined. It is a brilliant example of how a very specific geological event, millions of years ago, created a treasure that is found nowhere else on the entire planet. 21. A shoreline longer than the Pacific coast. It is hard to wrap your head around the sheer size of Fort Peak Lake. In eastern Montana, this massive reservoir was created by the construction of the Fort Peak Dam on the Missouri River during the 1930s. While it is a popular spot for fishing and boating, the most mind-boggling geographical statistic is its shoreline. Fort Peak Lake has a shoreline that stretches for over 2,500 odd minutes. To put that into perspective, that is longer than the entire Pacific coastline of California, Oregon, and Washington combined. When you stand on the edge of what locals call the Prairie Ocean, you realize just how much water is tucked away in the middle of the Great Plains. 20. The ghost of a massive inland sea. If you look at the geography of the Missoula Valley today, you might notice strange horizontal lines etched into the sides of the surrounding mountains. These are actually ancient shorelines from glacial Lake Missoula. About 15,000 years ago, a massive ice dam blocked the Clark Fork River, creating a lake that was roughly the size of Lake Ontario and Lake Erie combined. This event, known as the Missoula Floods, completely reshaped the geography of the Pacific Northwest, carving out the channeled scablands. Standing in downtown Missoula today and realizing you would have been under 2,000 ft of water back then is a truly humbling thought. 19. A lake born in a single night. The geography of Montana can change in an instant, as evidenced by the creation of Earthquake Lake in 1959. On a late August night, a massive 7.3 magnitude earthquake struck the Madison River Canyon near West Yellowstone. This massive landslide completely blocked the Madison River, creating a natural dam that stood over 200 ft tall. In the days following the event, the water backed up behind this mountain of rock, forming a new body of water that we now call Earthquake Lake or Quake Lake. 18. The longest free-flowing river in the nation. The Yellowstone River is a geographical icon, and for a very good reason, running for 692 mi from its source in Wyoming through the heart of Montana to its confluence with the Missouri River. It is the longest undammed river in the contiguous United States. While most major rivers in America have been harnessed for power or irrigation with large concrete dams, the Yellowstone remains free-flowing. It is a rare geographical treasure of the American West. 17. The world record for a temperature roller coaster. Montana's geography makes it a prime location for extreme weather events, particularly the phenomenon known as Chinook winds. It started at a bone-chilling 54 degrees below zero and climbed all the way up to 49 degrees above zero. This happens because the geography of the Rocky Mountain front allows cold, Arctic air to be pushed out rapidly by the descending warm air from the Pacific. Imagine waking up in a deep freeze and by the time you finish lunch, needing to take off your heavy winter coat because it has become a mild spring day. 16. The birthplace of the mighty Missouri. In a relatively small area near the town of Three Forks, the geography of Montana produces one of the most significant river confluences in North America. When Meriwether Lewis and William Clark arrived here in 1805, they were amazed by the geography of the wide, flat valley surrounded by distant peaks. It is a geographical crossroads that has served as a landmark for indigenous people and explorers for thousands of years. 15. A mountain range saved for the buffalo. In western Montana, there is a unique geographical feature known as the National Bison Range. This is not just a park. It is a small, isolated mountain range called the Mission Mountains. Foothills that was specifically set aside in 1908 to provide a safe haven for the American bison. If you drive to the top of Red Sleep Mountain within the range, you can look out over the vast Flathead Valley and see the ancient strand lines where the water once stood. It is a place where biological conservation and ancient geology meet in a stunning display of natural beauty. 14. Standing exactly halfway to the North Pole. If you travel to the southern edge of Montana near the town of Gardner, you will find a marker for the 45th parallel. This is a geographical line of latitude that sits exactly halfway between the equator and the North Pole. Interestingly, due to the way state borders were surveyed in the 19th century, the actual border between Montana and Wyoming was intended to follow this parallel, but the original surveyors wavered a bit. Today, modern technology like the global positioning system shows that the state line and the 45th parallel do not always perfectly align, adding a bit of human error to the geographical history of the region. 13. The dramatic wall where plains meet peaks. One of the most striking geographical features in the state is the Rocky Mountain front. Unlike many mountain ranges that have long rolling foothills, the geography of the Rocky Mountain front is incredibly sharp. In some places, you can literally have one foot on the flat prairie and the other on the steep slope of a mountain. The sheer vertical rise of the mountains acting as a wall against the winds of the plains creates some of the most dramatic weather and scenery in the entire United States of America. It is a boundary that defines the two very different halves of Montana's landscape. 12. The mini Grand Canyon of the North. Deep in southern Montana, the Big Horn River has carved a stunning geographical masterpiece known as Bighorn Canyon. This canyon is over 50 miles long and features sheer limestone walls that rise up to 1,000 ft above the water. Geologically, it was formed through a process called superimposition. Today, the Bighorn Canyon National Recreation Area allows visitors to boat through these deep, narrow corridors of stone that look remarkably like the famous canyons of the desert Southwest. The geography here is a sharp contrast to the lush forests of western Montana, featuring high desert plateaus and rugged cliffs that feel like a hidden world tucked away on the border of Wyoming. It is a powerful reminder of the relentless force of moving water. 11. The wild beauty of the Missouri River Breaks, the Upper Missouri River Breaks. National Monument is a geographical marvel that covers about 375,000 acres in central Montana. The geography here is so rugged and complex that it remained one of the last truly wild places in the American West, to be settled. When you float down this section of the Missouri River, you're seeing the landscape exactly as Meriwether Lewis and William Clark saw it in 1850. The breaks are essentially a series of deep eroded coulees and badlands that stretch away from the river, creating a labyrinth of terrain that provides a home for bighorn sheep and elk. It is a place where the history of the earth is laid bare in the layers of stone and silt. Remember to subscribe my channel and like to keep learning amazing information about each state in our beautiful country. 10. The ancient sandstone sentinels of Billings. The sand deposited along that ancient beach eventually compressed into the stone we see today. The rims rise between 200 and 500 ft above the valley floor, providing a dramatic geographical backdrop to the city below. Rising about 150 ft above the Yellowstone River is a massive sandstone outcrop known as Pompey's Pillar. Long before European explorers arrived, it was a vital landmark and signpost for indigenous people who left petroglyphs on its surface. However, its most famous geographical claim to fame is that it contains the only remaining physical evidence of the Lewis and Clark expedition found along their entire route. He named the pillar after Jean-Baptiste Charbonneau, the son of Sacagawea, whom Clark nicknamed Pomp, flowing through a deep limestone canyon in the central part of the state. The 59-mile stretch between Camp Baker and Eden Bridge is the only river in Montana managed through a lottery system to prevent overcrowding. Civilization. Because the river is relatively shallow and winding, it requires careful navigation, but the reward is some of the best trout fishing and most beautiful scenery in the world. The limestone geography also creates numerous caves and rock shelters along the banks, some of which contain ancient pictographs left by early inhabitants. 7. The mathematical precision of square, but in the plains of central Montana, there is a geological formation that looks so perfectly shaped it seems almost artificial. Square, but is what geologists call a lacalith, which is a massive intrusion of volcanic rock that pushed up between layers of sedimentary rock without breaking through to the surface. Over millions of years, the softer surrounding rock eroded away, leaving behind a flat-topped mountain with nearly vertical sides. Rising over 2,000 ft above the surrounding prairie, it serves as a massive geographical landmark that can be seen for dozens of miles in every direction. It is a perfect example of how volcanic activity deep beneath the Earth's crust can create striking geometric landforms on the surface. 6. The hydrological marvel of the 50-mile riffle. Unlike most rivers that alternate between deep pools and shallow rapids, the Madison here maintains a steady, fast-moving flow over a bed of cobble-sized rocks for almost 50 minutes. This geography creates a massive, continuous riffle that provides a perfect habitat for insects and the trout that eat them. It is essentially a giant food factory for fish. Because the water is moving at such a constant pace over such a long distance, it creates a unique challenge for those navigating the river, as there are very few places where the water truly slows down. 5 mountains made of gems. West of the Continental Divide in Granite County, you will find the Sapphire Mountains. While most mountain ranges are named after their appearance or a famous person, this range is named for the actual treasures hidden within its geography. Geologically, these sapphires were formed deep in the Earth's mantle and brought to the surface by volcanic activity about 50 million years ago. Unlike the Yogo sapphires found in central Montana, the stones here are alluvial, meaning they were washed out of their original rock by ancient rivers and deposited in gravel beds. The geography of the range is a mix of dense forest and rugged peaks, but it is what lies beneath the surface that makes it unique. Montana holds the record for the coldest temperature ever recorded in the contiguous United States, and the location of this record is a lesson in mountain geography. On January 20th, 1954, a weather station at Rogers Pass recorded a temperature of 70 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. Rogers Pass sits on the Continental Divide at an elevation of 5,610 feet. The geography of the pass is shaped like a natural bowl, which allows heavy, frigid Arctic air to flow over the divide from the east and become trapped in the low-lying areas. When this happens, the air remains stagnant and continues to cool down, especially on clear, calm nights with fresh snow on the ground. This combination of elevation, topography, and atmospheric pressure created a perfect storm of cold that is yet to be beaten in any of the lower 48 states. It is a place where the geography literally dictates the extreme limits of survival. 3. The jagged border of the Bitterroot Range. If you look at the western border of Montana, you will notice it has a very jagged, irregular shape that looks like the profile of a face. This is because the border with Idaho follows the crest of the Bitterroot Range. The geography of these mountains is incredibly rugged with sharp granite peaks and deep glacial valleys that made travel nearly impossible for early explorers. Meriwether Lewis and William Clark struggled immensely to cross this range, nearly starving as they navigated the Lolo Trail. The highest point in the range is Trapper Peak, which stands at 10,157 ft, because the border follows the Continental Divide along the mountaintops. Often simply called the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex, which includes the Great Bear and Scapegoat Wilderness areas, covers more than 1.5 million acres of roadless territory. This is a geographical sanctuary where the only way to travel is by foot or on horseback. It is part of one of the most ecologically complete mountain ecosystems in the lower 48 states, meaning it still contains every species of mammal that lived there before European settlement except for the bison. Because there are no roads, the geography remains pristine, providing a massive unbroken corridor for wildlife like grizzly bears and wolves to roam for hundreds of miles. It is a place where the scale of the landscape is so large it can actually be seen from space as a massive dark green heart in the center of the mountains. 1. The county that is bigger than 3 states. To truly understand the massive scale of Montana's geography, you have to look at Beaverhead County in the southwestern corner of the state. Beaverhead is the largest of Montana's 56 counties, covering 5,542 square miles. To put that into a geographical perspective, that makes sense. Beaverhead County is actually larger than the entire state of Connecticut. The geography of the county is a mix of high-altitude valleys, the Continental Divide, and the source of the Missouri River. It is a place where you can drive for hours and never leave the same county, passing through mountain ranges and vast cattle ranches. Let's see how many of us picked the same fact. And if you think we missed something or want to add your own fun fact, we'd love to hear from you. Your comments help us make every video even better. Also, if you noticed any pronunciation slips here and there, thank you for your patience. We're working hard to get better with every video. And speaking of videos, there's another one on screen right now so you can keep exploring the geography of our beautiful country. But before you go, don't forget to subscribe my channel and give it a like so we can keep learning together. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching.